Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Author. Today's guest is Audrey Gale, and I love the name Audrey because that was my mom's name. So, Audrey, take it away.
Take it away. Well, thank you so much, Travis, for having me today. It's there's been a little bit of a family issue emergency going on in my life, so this is the first time I'm back back to
I'm
work
sorry to hear that.
and back to discussing my work, which I'm 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 passionate about. I'm passionate about my work because of what I've seen and experienced with what I wrote about, which is the underlying science of my novel. But it is a novel. It is a suspenseful building medical thriller. So there's both elements. There's real amazing science that we should all know about. I really feel like it's where medicine will ultimately go in recognizing the energetic basis of not just our bodies, but the universe and how that should be, how that can be utilized to address disease, to increase your health and longevity. And so that's what my book is about.
Kind of expound upon that. Is it what you eat? Is it what you do? Is it how you feel? Is it what you think? How does all that play into what you're talking?
Well, it probably all plays into it because it affects the energy of our body. Our minds certainly affect the energy of our body. But what I wrote about was two scientists back in the 1920s and 30s who had one of them built an incredible, still not to be matched light microscope. And it was so powerful that they decided to take a sneak peek at a specimen slide. You know, when you go to the doctor, you get a biopsy or they draw your blood. They ended up making a specimen slide. I have it actually here on my book, a specimen slide.
Push it
Um,
over in front of your face a little bit so we can see it better. Bring it
okay.
over.
Is that
There you
good?
go. Look at that. Excellent. There you go.
Specimen side. This one is kind of grim looking. It's cracked and it's got a big blood blotch on it. But but
Here's what it
anyway,
is.
that's not normal. That's just drama for the cover. Anyway, they make a specimen slide. You know what? I'm gonna have to close my door. Hold on.
There, go ahead.
The exterminator arrived. So anyway, um, and most of the time, and still today, still absolutely common practice today is that they treat the specimen, whether it's tissue or blood or some kind of liquid, on the little slide. They treat it with chemicals to enhance its visibility, to preserve it, etc. Well, in my story, one of the scientists starts to get the idea that even though they're looking at over 60,000 times magnification, which is a lot more than normal in normal microscopes. It's like 30 times more than normal, best normal microscopes. Um, that maybe they weren't seeing anything new because the chemicals were having an effect. So they look at live specimen under this fabulous, powerful microscope. And what they discover is this kind of teeming life form. And it's microbial and it's also smaller than bacteria. So they don't want to use the word virus because that would put them at odds with the medical establishment for a whole bunch of detailed reasons. So anyway, they studied this microbe and they see that every disease they test drawn from terminal patients has this living microbe, but they all look a little bit different and they all act a little bit different. And it turns out that when they measured their vibration rates, they all have a different vibration rate. In other words, each disease had a signature vibration rate. So they ended up utilizing that exact frequency and found out that it overwhelms the microbe, the disease microbe, and it actually kills the disease microbe because it changes its cell function, it changes the shape of the microbe, the cells in the microbe. And so it breaks it down, it overwhelms it and breaks it down. So the good news was it didn't affect anything around it. It only affected the disease. So that
Fuck is going on.
is what my book is about. And I wrote this book based on the fact that my father came to my house after his first and last chemotherapy treatment. And he said to me, I don't care, Audrey. I don't care. I would rather die than go through that again. So I had met.
Okay, yeah. So hold on. So my internet dropped again. So let I don't know how far that was. It was just the last couple minute maybe. Talk about that single that microorganism, how they all had that, and we'll take
Yeah,
it from
so
there.
every disease they tested had the microorganism living in a living state. They were just teeming and vibrating and dancing around the specimen slide. And so they, again, by happenstance, or I don't know exactly how, they discovered that if they could replicate that exact frequency of that microbe, it actually began to change the cell function of the microbe. It changed its shape, it changed its function, and it overwhelmed the microbe and it killed it. But nothing else
Wow,
around it would.
just that microbe was killed. Nothing else. None of the other cells or nothing
Nothing
around it. Just that.
else. So it completely left the rest of the body or all healthy tissues and cells untouched. So I had seen this in my father. My father was cured of leukemia by this method, which I had happened upon in with my dog. When I moved to Los Angeles, my dog was 13 years old, a golden retriever. She was very, very sick. And I looked, every vet I went to said, just put her down. She's had a nice lump. But I couldn't do it. I didn't know anybody in Los Angeles, and she was my only friend. So I found a holistic vet, and he did all sorts of weird things. He did, not that chiropractic is weird, but he used homeopathic methods, he used chiropractic, he used everything you could imagine, including sound vibrations. And he's the one that
Wow.
explained to me about the scientists. And then I did the major research on them and ended up writing this novel based on my dog's life being saved and my father's life being saved based on sound, which is it's not exactly what the scientists were doing because they had much more sophisticated equipment, but it was related through a physics term called harmonics. It's like stepping it down on a piano by octaves until it comes into the spectrum of sound. And that's what my vet gave my father, and that's what cured my father of leukemia. And he died some years later of pneumonia. So
So do normal, not holistic doctors, do they practice that? I mean, is that something that the research is out there is about how do they
it has
bombard it with sound?
it has been, well, certainly there are approaches based on sound. Just the Om in yoga is a kind of raising of vibration. There are places you can go and have a sound bath. It's all based on
I
elevating
think I
your
went to some of those in the 70s. I think there was
They're still around.
I think it was a concert. I think it was a concert. I think it was
Yeah. So I don't know about most concerts if they actually raise your, well, they raise your body vibration or if they lower it. But anyway, so I mean, there are places that utilize sound. But this specific discovery and utilization was really vehemently suppressed in the 30s.
Wow.
And they also confiscated all the microscopes, and no one has been able to replicate that microscope that I'm aware of to date. But there, like there are so the United States has a particularly, how would you call it, strict medical governance.
Yes.
So if
Regulation.
you, yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, there's laws on the book that say what you can use to treat disease, and you think, well, how did the lawmakers get involved in this? What do they know about it? But anyway,
Well, they don't know too much about what they're doing, so they definitely don't know what you're doing or anybody else is doing.
I agree
That's
with
like
you.
they're a bunch of robbers. They're a
Yeah,
bunch of robbers.
they're good at insider trading, I've been hearing.
Yeah, they're
Anyway,
pretty good at that.
there are places in the world that are far less restrictive. In those places, for example, Germany, there are people here underground. There are people all over the world in varying degrees of underground, depending on their local governance, that are using this discovery. So I feel like there is a wave that maybe my novel is catching of people saying, we know something has to be wrong with our medical system. It is so expensive. And you don't necessarily get a cure, you get remission. That then means at some point later down the road, you'll probably have another issue. So, I think people are just becoming more and more dissatisfied. And I hope this book just provides them with a new way of thinking about their health and their bodies and actually the entire universe. We are one big, huge electromagnetic field. When Einstein died, he was working on what he called the unified field theory, and he died before he could prove. He wanted to do a very simple equation like E equals mc squared, prove that the universe was this massive electromagnetic field with varying concentrations of energy throughout. And so that's really like super, super in the background of my novel, but it's there in that, yeah, we are energetic first. We are not chemical first. We are energetic first. And that fact should be used to treat our health and our longevity.
So, are you a believer in these locations around the earth on Earth that have a greater electrical presence, like the middle of the pyramid? I think it's Kephrons or Cheops, one of those two. That the energy and that is it's different. It's more intense, and there's other
It's a
places in the
vortex.
world that like that.
It's a vortex, right? Is what you're talking about?
Mm,
Vortex?
I think
Yeah.
so.
Um, I don't really profess to know anything about that. What I do profess to know is that there was a connection between pathology, which is my lead character. He's a pathologist
Mm,
from a really hard, violent upbringing who makes his way all the way through Harvard Medical as a specialist in pathology. And I have a very good friend who's a pathologist, so he advised me during the writing of this book. I also have had a very good friend who is a important physicist, and he also advised me, and it just kept coming back to me. He just kept coming together, this electromagnetic energy that permeates everything.
mm.
So, so that's what I wanted to write about. I've heard that there is vortex. Like, for example, I understand Jerusalem is supposed to be a vortex,
Mhm.
and but I can't speak to that. I don't know anything about it, and I sound enough like a geek already talking about physics and pathology. Need to limit myself here because what I really am interested in, aside from the subject matter of my book, is telling a really good story.
Yeah.
I
Right.
have,
That's the important part.
yeah, telling a really good story. I love to be educated when I read, not even realizing I'm being educated, that the characters and the story itself have captured me. And and then I realize, wait, I didn't know anything about that, and I'm learning this and that. And that's what I hope this book also does, is opens your eyes to some minor, I mean, it's certainly not a deep dive, but physics, and not a deep dive into pathology, but they're both there and how they connect.
Enough to tickle you a little bit. I mean, I've been in the middle of both, I think, Kepframs and Cams.
Oh, yeah?
I've been in both of them. So
Well, tell me, did you feel it?
it's, I don't know. I mean, it's a long time ago, but it's interesting getting in there because it's right in the middle of the pyramid. So you got to go. Sometimes these crawlways are really small. Then they'll open up to this big expanse, and so you don't be claustrophobic. I'll tell you that. That would not be a good place to be claustrophobic. But I mean, you feel something because just the massiveness of the structure is just, and you're in the middle of it. So that's interesting.
Hmm.
But I mean, I've had some folks on here. They talked about sacred geometry, how shapes and everything can have something about your well-being. I don't know, but I think if you take care of yourself and have a good outlook, um, you know, I think it definitely helps being an ass all the time to people. I mean, that doesn't do any good to anybody, right? I don't think so.
No, it doesn't. It brings the whole world down.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So what got you? I mean, so my granddaughter had leukemia at 2 years old, and
Oh
she's
my
9 years
God.
old right now,
Good.
and she is a force to be reckoned with.
Is she
So
in remission? Is
how did
she
you?
cured or what?
Pardon me.
Do you feel like she's in remission? Do you feel like she's cured? What do you think?
I think she's I think she's cured. It'll be 5 years this year in October. But
That's great.
I pray to God she's cured because she is tough. Um,
That's great.
yeah,
Good for you.
I tell people they say I'm having a bad day. Well, you want to have a bad day? Go to a cancer ward at Children's Hospital. That's a bad day. So what got you into writing about this? Was there a catalyst or something that just say, hey, I need to write this. I want to get it out. The story.
Yeah, there certainly was. So I had three sort of profound medically related experiences in my life that really caused my brain to focus in. And the first was in my mid-30s. I had a really nasty infection throughout my body. Turns out that I had a very severe infection in my lymph system. So my lymphs were visible. You could see them down my shins, down the inside of my arms. They were painful and they were ugly. And I lived in San Francisco at that time, and I went to my internist, and he sent me to every specialist that there is, I swear. The exotic disease specialist, the cancer specialist, the this, the that. And they all tried things on me and nothing worked. So a guy that worked with me at the time said, I don't think you have anything to lose to come with me to my acupuncturist. And I said, I certainly don't have anything to lose. At that time, I thought I was dying of leukemia. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I went to this man's acupuncturist, and it was a sister brother team, Chinese Dr. O and Dr. O. And the first one was the woman who gave me an acupuncture treatment after stabbing one of my swollen lips and saying, I don't care what you call this, you have infection all over your body. And so she treated me for the infection. And then she sent me next door to her brother, who Dr. O number two was the herbalist. And he concocted this nasty smelling and tasting powder that he instructed me eat nothing else. Put this powder, X amount, in a organic vegetable smoothie with as much onion and garlic as you can tolerate. But he did
Wow.
say it was good. He said there
Uh,
was good news. You can eat as many times a day as you want.
but you lost all your friends.
Yeah, you know. Anyway, it was miraculous, truly.
Wow.
Overnight, the swelling started to go down. And I know I went back for another acupuncture treatment or two, but I didn't go for months and weeks and years. And and so I went back to my internist. Now all the swelling was gone in a very short time. And my internist said, "Holy mackerel, what have you been doing?" And I told him. And his response was, "Well, I think there's a place for Eastern medicine and a place for Western medicine." In his opinion, Western medicine is for when you can no longer fight for yourself. Your immune system can't regulate. And so maybe that's true. Maybe it's not true. I think it's probably a little too shallow, but
Broad.
there
Yeah.
is a place. I mean, I think of if you were in a terrible car accident, of course, Western medicine is what you're looking for.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
question. Yeah. So there is a place for both. And then, so that was the first time the universe seemed to be shaking me up and saying, "Are you paying attention here?" And then some years go by, and my dog, as I explained briefly, my dog got very sick when I moved to Los Angeles, and she had a kind of similar something. It was like oozing from her skin. And so that holistic vet did so many wonderful things for her. And at the same time would explain to me what he was basing this on. Who were the people that he studied? And what was the theory that he was working under? And then, of course, my dad, as I told you, my dad and his leukemia. So I had three sort of universe knocking me over the head saying, "Are you paying attention? And what are you going to do with this information that you've experienced firsthand?"
Huh.
And I'd already written one novel. And so I thought, well, I'm going to figure out how to make this into a compelling story that also faithfully portrays the underlying discoveries of these scientists. So
Very
that's how that
cool.
long to be.
Interesting. Interesting. But your
Yeah.
background's not medicine.
No, no, it's not. I have an undergraduate business degree and I have a master's degree in writing. But, this kind of proved to me something else, which is if you are really determined, you can figure things out. You can seek until you find.
Yes.
Oh, you really can. You can learn what you really want to learn. You can learn it, and you can even learn to talk about it in a way that is convincing enough to be in a novel.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote a couple thriller books, and then I decided to write a historical nonfiction for World War One.
Oh,
So I dug deep and did a lot of research. I mean, if in the book, if it says it's a full moon that day, 1918, it's a full moon that day, 1918, or the weapons or the battles. So I've become somewhat of a amateur historian of World War One by writing about it.
that I hope you know the book, The Guns of August.
Hmm.
Have you? Yeah, because that is a fabulous history of World War One. I feel the same way. So what I did with this novel, because I love historical fiction, I love to be back in a different time and try to understand what it would have been like, what you would have been hearing and seeing and thinking. So the background of this book, The Human Trial, takes place in the night. It starts really at just after the Depression, the Great Depression that affected everything in the world. And it goes up until the outbreak of World War II, which is September 3rd, 1939. And each chapter is usually almost always a year, and then something significant about that year. So there's a lot of sort of FDR statements in here, the New Deal, Social Security, and so forth. So that is in there. And also, the invasion of Poland doesn't make it in, but Russia entering the war, Germany invading Russia, all that's all in there in a background kind of way because it does the scene accurately.
Yeah. Yeah. When you write something like that, you have to be historically correct in whatever you want it to be from like my book it's fiction, but it's historical, but it's the timeline of what goes on is historically correct.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Uh,
Both of my
the
books are
document,
like,
yeah. So because I wanted to make sure that that was like that.
yeah.
Then the rest is the first part's real, how they picked the first unknown soldier, World War One. That's true, how they did that. So that's in the book, and then the timeline is real, and then the diary and the father and son interaction are just fiction for the
Wow,
most part.
that's incredible. A long time ago, I mean, maybe 10 years ago, I sat next to a man at a New Year's Eve party, and he said to me, "You know where I was 40x years ago to today?" I said, "No." He said, "I was at the Battle of the Bulge, laying in a icy
Wow.
ditch, thinking that this was my last day on Earth." I don't know, it just gave me chills. It just gave me chills, this man. And he was
Hmm.
so happy and so appreciative of being alive. Maybe
Yeah.
that would be the gift, if
Yeah.
there is one.
Yeah. That is absolutely good. So, is there going to be a series or a sequel off of this? Is a protagonist be able to carry on his tools of the trade?
Well, the protagonist, let me put it this way, I'm planning this as a trilogy. And so I'm already at work on the sequel. Actually, I'm a little behind being at work on the sequel, but I'm working. And it's going to be a multi-generational family saga. So
Okay.
there will be a character or two that holds over into the sequel, but it's also some new generations that have descended that end up sort of in a similar predicament of going up against the establishment.
Ah, all right. All right. And it's going to be a trilogy.
Yeah,
That's what you're
so
thinking.
I was not thinking of a trilogy initially. I was thinking of a 30s story and then a 70s story. Those times being especially sort of uh, fraught with upheaval.
Hmm.
One, the depression to the war. And the 70s, Nixon is getting kicked out of the White House, and the Vietnam War is trying to come to an end, and there's lots of protesting. And anyway, so that was another good time. But then we came into COVID. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking about these tiny little microbes, which most likely would be viruses. And that's exactly what COVID was. And so I thought, well, I have an opportunity to bring this into modern times. And what I like about that is that the suppression of these discoveries is ongoing. It it's changing slowly, but the establishment is into the status quo. That's kind of the obvious definition.
Exactly. Yeah.
So change will come, but it's coming slowly. But it's coming. It's coming.
Well, it's inevitable. The universe is expanding, and time is coming your way. That's for darn sure.
That is true.
So, when you're not writing, what do you do?
Well, so when I'm not writing, well, let's see. I've had a lot of recent experience with taking care of someone very ill, which has been very difficult and sad, but a disease that no one had heard of. So anyway, it was just kind of out of my hands and out of our hands. Um, I am a big hiker. I hit the Santa Monica Mountains whenever I can. You know, I kind of an exercise feed. I feel like I need to work out almost every
Yep.
day of the week.
Yep. I'm the
And
same way.
I read. I read by the tons.
Excellent. Excellent.
In
So,
fact, two books that inspired me, I just want to mention them. Two books that
yeah, go ahead.
inspired me were All the Light We Cannot See Anthony Doerr's novel about World War II in Brittany, but it has so much science. It's got radio science, so that kind of relates to what I'm working on. And it's also got marine biology, and it's one of those books you're learning so much because you're so intrigued by the characters. And also, Robin Cook has written many medical thrillers, and that also is kind of inspiration to this particular novel, this particular series of novels, this medical thriller.
Right. So, have you thought about writing out another genre, or you want to stick with this, or have you thought about doing? Yeah.
Well, we're going to try to get through 3 books before we start thinking about that. But
Right.
my first novel was called The Sausage Maker's Daughters, and I wrote under a different pen name at that time. I wrote under initials AGS Johnson. And that book is a legal thriller. So here I am. I would not have said I was necessarily a thriller fan, but I seem to be writing about them, writing in that genre.
So now you did the lawyer and the doctor. So you got the guy chasing the ambulance. Fantastic.
Exactly. Exactly.
Fantastic.
I found an old book that was out of print, but I was able to get my hands on it on courtroom procedure. And it was so great. It was so detailed. It really, really was authentic. And I had a good friend at the time who was a Superior Court judge here in Los Angeles County. And he said to me, "Oh, I just love that book. I was on the edge of my seat. I was expecting, but this was a little wrong." And that was none of that. He loved it. So I felt like that research really, really paid
Interesting.
off.
Interesting. So I always ask the authors, what do you do? And I don't think anybody's cracked the code yet of marketing. What do you do to get your book out?
Well, I have worked now for 2 books with the same PR people who, back in the day, we did, um, extensive traveling around the United States. I went to book fairs, I went to conferences, I was on a lot of panels at places like that, and bookstores, of course, all over the country. And in post-COVID world, there's a lot more that's done like us today on the internet. A lot more than was. So in a way that makes it easier, you're not living in an airport out of a suitcase.
I've done that
Um,
before.
but it also there's something missing too. The one-on-one meeting people was always very stimulating to me, and I enjoyed it. So my PR people do a lot of events on book club sites and on my website, and I do a speaker series based on this book, which is the surprise of my life. I never thought of myself as a good speaker. And here I find myself now talking to medical practitioners, health practitioners of every ilk, you know, from acupuncture to this energetic aspect. And so I've been interviewing them on a monthly basis on a Zoom broadcast. And that's another way you get your name of your book out there. If people like what they're hearing and it resonates with them, resonance being another big aspect of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
it resonates, then people might pick it up, they might listen to it, whatever, and hopefully that builds over time.
Yeah.
But
Excellent.
it's
Excellent.
a battle. As you know,
Well,
it's
yeah,
very noisy out here.
it's yes, and there is a lot. So you got to try different things and find one that works enough to, kind of keep you out there interested in doing it. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I
Well,
think
what
maybe
do you
the
want to
sequel, no, I think maybe
go
the
ahead?
sequel will.
Well, that's what people say. You write series and people will read a later one because they don't know the earlier one, and it'll make them go back and read the earlier one, or they're more, susceptible to doing that. So what
Yeah.
kind of parting shots do you want to give it to the audience? Parting advice or
Well,
anything?
okay. So here's my book.
Put it right in front of your face. There we go. Perfect.
Is that
Yep.
good?
Yep. That's perfect.
Okay. And Audrey Gale, Gale, like the big wind.
Hmm.
And I have, I'm on most of the social media. If you search Audrey Gale, you'd find me, my website, audreygaleauthor.com. And just stay tuned because more is coming. And I
Excellent.
love feedback. And there's a way of giving me feedback. So let's all get on this wave and change things for the better.
Yep. And they get your book on Amazon, uh, Barnes and Nobles, all those places, right?
You can get my book anywhere. Now, your local
Okay.
bookstore may have to order it for you, but
Right.
it is available wherever books are sold. Of
Yep.
course, Amazon being the big kahuna here. Yeah, but all the sites.
Well, excellent. Excellent. Well, Audrey, it's been a pleasure having you on. Best of luck on your book and the subsequent book and the next one after that.
Thank you. And the
And
subsequent stuff.
yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks so
Thank you.
much, Travis.
Yeah. Thank you.